Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Del. Welcome, everybody.
Yes, so we have decided that we're going to talk today about overcoming deception, because last week we I read this book that I shared with everybody about, it's called Shame. We talked about the fantasist and how we can, inadvertently get involved with somebody that's spinning a whole life that's just not real. It's just fantasy. And how some of us get sucked into that. And again, some of it is purely just on the emotional level we get taken advantage of, and some of it is financial. I touched on it last week, but I know of somebody who was posing as some sort of spiritual leader who was, with all these tales of the amazing work they were doing in San Quentin and having these men's meetings and everything. And in the meantime, scamming every woman he met for money. And,
Yeah.
it was very subtle. There was lots of hints along the way. Fortunately, my little red flag was going up in me going, you know what? I'm not giving this person money. There's something not right here. I don't like this. And thank God, because I know quite a few other women that did and got taken for quite a ride. And it's horrendous, especially I think when it's under the guise of being a spiritual leader. It's even more distressing to me than just the sort of regular Joe on the street. But anyway,
So let me add another couple of deceptive practices to the conversation before we get into the healing part, because I know there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. Because when we talk about overcoming deception, it's not just necessarily the fantasist like we talked about last week. It's also about somebody trying to convince you of something you know intuitively isn't correct, but you rather choose into it because you think you'll feel better because of it. So that's the sort of the mechanics. And so in some cases, like we said last week, last episode, there have been the whole thing with pickup artists, the guys who basically would teach other guys how to use the right number of questions or statements or words to get a woman into bed. That was really deceptive, to be blunt, because it wasn't authentic. And yes, there may be some temporary result, benefit, satisfaction that comes from it, but the price is not too high to pay for that. And so a lot of people, unfortunately, are carrying this shame, guilt, all these different feelings. And we talked about these before in the forgiveness process a few weeks ago, having this blockage inside, basically this pain of having fallen victim to somebody else's manipulations. They don't know what to do with it. And so what we're going to talk about today is about how to heal that, how to move beyond it, and how to basically, ideally, not fall for it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're human, and we are going to, we hope that we learn along the way, but sometimes we do slip up again and we do get pulled back into something. And I think the main thing is to really be kind and gentle to ourselves and to understand that we are human. I also wanted to, and I love that you bring that in again, Barry. This is not just about, a fantasist. This is about any type of deception. There are a million scams out there that are happening every single day. And it's such a shame that we have to, I even got one this morning. It's like, oh, you tried to change your Facebook password. If this wasn't you, press this link. Now, I am so paranoid these days. I didn't try and change my password, but I didn't press the link because I didn't trust that it was Facebook saying, I just pick up the phone now. And I had the same thing the other day with a fraudulent thing on my American Express card. Again, I call Amex. I do not click on that number. And have a conversation with somebody and get the card replaced. So it's so sad that we do live in a world where we have to become hyper vigilant, hyper suspicious of people. And I think I've mentioned once before, I felt that my mother was a very suspicious person. and she used to call me Pollyanna. And I remember I used to turn around and say, Mum, I'd rather be a Pollyanna and happy than somebody that lives in suspicion. I think there's a happy medium, you know.
Yes.
I think I was veered too much the other way, but we do live in a world right now where people really don't care about stealing, robbing, deceiving, and it leaves a lot of people feeling victimized. And the awful part about it is they don't blame the perpetrator, they end up blaming themselves, which is
This is the trap. Yes.
really victimizing themselves.
Yeah. If I don't want to speak to a couple of things you mentioned, because the challenge is the deceptions are everywhere. It's very true. I've been dealing lots of text messages and WhatsApp messages and even Telegram messages coming through that I know, thankfully, my school's been home by experience, that are definitely scam alert type things. They're fishing for something, and fishing with the PH, by the way.
Yes.
So the understanding is that happens in real life. People will do that and have been doing that, as we said last week, in different ways for a long time. And yes, this is one of the saddest parts, is that when somebody gets manipulated by these people, the person who gets manipulated feels that they somehow did something wrong because they fell for it. And it is unfortunate. And this is the thing about, I mean, talk about guilt, when I would talk about this in the process. Guilt is basically a feeling that we've somehow violated who we are, and we're now blaming ourselves because we didn't live up to the expectation of who we are as a good person. We fell for something we became victim of, and we basically create this wall between us and who we really are, totally made up, but we think we can't get back to that and be the real person anymore.
Yeah.
So this is about how to really overcome that and become back to wholeness again. Because the other part is, like you were saying, is that no one's saying necessarily you were paranoid, but you become more aware enough to notice when those things look fake. You don't fall for them.
Yeah.
That's the level you want to get at, where you become so discerning and smart that you go, no, it's too good to be true.
Yeah. And well, I mean, again, and there's that range. It can be
Yeah.
something so simple as, it can be the ones like, oh, I've just won billions of dollars and I'm giving 1 million to the first 36 people that answer this email. There's that scam. Well,
Yeah.
though that falls into the category of too good to be true. Yeah.
Yes.
Don't be greedy. Nothing's, free sort of thing. But there's the subtle ones. There's the ones where really decent, wonderful people are taken advantage of. When it's altruistic, that you believe that you're doing something for the good of somebody else, not for your
Mm.
benefit. And unfortunately, it usually is the really kind, considerate, sweet, empathetic person that gets taken. So right there, I think you have to remember that the reason that you may have been scammed or taken advantage of is because you are a decent person. You're
Hmm.
not somebody that thinks in that way. So therefore, you wouldn't see it as suspicious because you would never do it yourself. It would never
Right.
cross your mind to take advantage of another human being. So I think that's number one for me. Number one, recognize the reason why you got taken advantage of is because you're actually a wonderful, kind person that doesn't think like a malicious narcissist or psychopath or sociopath who wants to take advantage of another person. So that's the first one, I think, is to really recognize that. It's so interesting. It's usually on the really more extreme scams, the people that catch them are because they themselves have that manipulative tendency and they can see it.
Ah.
I'm talking about
Okay.
the subtle ones, not the obvious ones. We're not talking about, as I said, invest in my mineral mine in South Africa. I'm not talking about that one. Or whoops, I lost my passport and I need money to go to the embassy. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the really clever ones. Often clever people can see, the what went the thought process behind it.
Yeah. The thing is that it is interesting. It's like, the people who tend to be targeted are really good people.
Hmm.
They're the people who basically are good people. And so the challenge that people who are good have is when they feel like they've fallen victim to something, they feel like, well, I'm a good person, but good people don't do that, so I can't be a good person. And there's this vicious circle that happens where the person who's been a victim of this manipulation, this deception, is at a war with themselves in a way, because they don't believe they're a good person, because a good person wouldn't have fallen for that, but they did, so they can't be a good person. Like, the logic is in there, as
Yeah.
simplistic and as inaccurate as it is, but it gets in the way. And so, I'm saying this bluntly, so people get the fact that when they make mistakes, it doesn't stop them being a good person.
Well, and I think on top of that, it's more than just a good person, because I think they can see I am okay. Like I said, there's some
Hmm.
people get taken out of greed. They
Yeah.
fall for the get rich quick schemes, and they're getting fallen for the greed. So maybe there is that part of them that's a little greedy, and they can own that. I'm talking about the people that give because they're giving to be generous or to be kind or to to philanthropic or whatever, that sort of thing. They can still be a good person, but what happens is they then judge themselves. They can say, okay, I was a good person. I can see how I got taken in by that. But I'm not just a good person, I'm a stupid person now. And that's
Mm.
where they start beating themselves up, is that they're stupid, that they fell for it, they didn't see it. And and again, it's that if we can't, if our brains don't think that way, we're not going to see it. You can't see what is not inside of you.
Right.
So it's not
That,
about intelligence. It's not about being stupid. You if your brain, if it's like if you're a pussycat, you're not going to think like a tiger. You just don't. Except for maybe my cat sometimes thinks it's a tiger.
right.
Sometimes he likes to give me a little bite, but mostly it's a different beast. It's a different animal. So we have to recognize that as well. That we're just not built that way. So therefore, if we didn't see it, it's because it's not in our consciousness. It's not in our awareness that that would be something that somebody could do.
But that's the thing, is and it is with the internal process here, because we are talking, in a way, the story we tell ourselves when we fall into those positions. And it is, I mean, how to say this, the people who fall for this stuff because they keep falling for this stuff, they don't really know a way out. They don't feel there's a way out, because they think that's the only answer for their dreams, is to follow somebody else's breadcrumbs. Whereas what we're talking about here, for people who's really are just, they got caught maybe once, maybe twice, and said, you know what, I want to stop doing this again, so I can really live my life the way I want to, and I want to be whole again, because I feel so wounded by what happened, by what I let myself fall into.
Yeah. And the other one I was going to say is, it's really what tends to happen to with these people that have been victims of deception is that they start to hide out. That they take on the shame of the person, the perpetrator. I'm just about to do a big talk on shame and about how
Hmm.
toxic shame is, about how we take on the shame of the shameless person, the person that has abused or manipulated or deceived us. We end up taking on their shame, and we take it on as our own, whereas it
Yeah.
does not belong to us. And I have a lovely little way of making sure that we give that back, that I'll share towards the end. The other thing is, when we don't internalize it and not talk about it, is we see that we're not alone, and that many people have been taken by scam artists and liars and cheats. And the more that we talk about it, and we can come together as a group and we go, oh my God, you too. Oh, I'm not alone here. I'm not the only idiot in the world. Apparently, other people have been taken in too. And that
Right.
reduces the level of shame, which is very important. Is to like, as I mentioned last week with this woman that wrote the book, that so many people, she said, oh, this is going to be the end of my career. I can't believe I'm confessing to this, that I was taken, and nobody's
Mhm.
going to, think that I'm worth my salt as a journalist if I could be taken. But the outpouring of support she got from people saying, no, it's me too, me too, and I'm a investigative reporter, or I'm a police person. I mean, even look at prisons. Remember that prison guard that got to see, she ended up helping the guy break out of prison. Same
Yeah.
thing. Raging narcissist. He convinced her that she was the love of his life, and she risked. I mean, she shot herself in the end. I mean, her shame was so great that she was deceived by this man, that she helped him escape from prison, and then to find out that she had just been used. That shame, rather than deal with that. She killed herself. It's tragic what
Oh
people
yeah.
do when they are the victims of these people.
It well, it's because and before I go any further, I just want to say that you don't have to kill yourself to get rid of the deception issues. Just to be clear.
Yes,
But the
absolutely.
thing I'm saying, what I want to say though is, for most people, what's happening, and this is the thing back to saying about guilt, like, is this feeling about being a good person that somehow we've violated our ability to be good, so you don't feel worthy anymore. And this whole worthiness issue, I'll talk about this in another lecture I gave a while ago. That the fact that if you're breathing and you're actually your heart's beating, you are already worthy. There's nothing you can't violate that. But we sometimes feel like that by falling prey to this other person, this other thing, we somehow dispensed with our worthiness, we dispensed with our goodness, and so we can't have it back. And this is the thing I want to make sure. I'm going to keep making this point because I'm going to get it. Is that doesn't go away. You make a mistake, you can you can pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and move on with your life. It's okay. And the thing about shame is it can become, and coming from a Jewish background, it was in my DNA for a while. Is that shame was something we carried as part of our life? That was what made us who we are. But the truth is, it doesn't make us. It's just simply part of what happens. And the shame is an option; it's not required. Yes, it does show that we have heart, that we are compassionate, because we aren't immune to feeling like we made a mistake. But what we do with it is key. How we work through it is key.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's an exercise that I learned is is to really write a letter to whoever has taken advantage of you, abused you, deceived you, whatever it is, and it's write everything. If
Yeah.
it happened as a child, if it happened as an adult, whenever, give voice to that part of you that is outraged, blame, attack, shame, whatever you need to do. This is not about you taking responsibility. That's stage two, which we will get to in a minute. This is about giving voice to that part of you. Let's not minimize, let's not do a spiritual bypass. Give voice to that part of you that needs to let those feelings out. That, as I said, the anger, the rage, the whatever,
Vitriol.
vitriol,
Yes.
exactly. Swear everything. Do not read this back. Don't edit yourself. Just purge, 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 and give it
Yes.
to them. It's their shame that you have absorbed. They behaved shamelessly, and you took on the shame. You are the victim in this situation. And once you've done that, you either burn the letter or you rip
Yes.
it into shreds. You either flush it down the toilet or you throw it into the ocean, like I like to do. But
Yeah.
whatever it is, whatever that energy is, let it go. Just let it go. Have your feelings. Know you're entitled to everything you feel. And then you can start the process of reflecting on the relationship, reflecting on, and this is not again about, beating yourself up and going, why didn't I see this? As I said, if we can't see it, we can't see it.
Right.
But to reflect on, because hindsight is always, that, oh my God, I should have known when this happened or when that happened, or, you know, um, for example, I think in a relationship I was in, when a woman calls and says, can I speak to so and so? And I say, who are you? And they say, I'm his girlfriend. You might want to listen to that instead of taking
Yes.
the excuses of, oh no, it was for my cousin and blah 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 and everything, and I got talked out of what was right there in front of me. Of course it was the girlfriend. Of course, but the next day the phones were blocked, that number was blocked, there was a new system on the phone, and I was, doing the best I can. That's all I'll say.
No, understandably. And so a couple of things on that. The burning thing. I'm a big fan of the burning stuff when it's done, because that to me makes it sure it really is cleansed. It's gone.
Yes.
I always get worried when you flush it in the toilet, it might come back up again. So I need flushing it. So a couple of quick things, also things I remember, because some people think they just do it on their computer and they can write it out and then delete it. It's like, no, it
No.
has to be visceral, physically on paper.
Yes.
One extra bonus point, if you want to do this, is use your non-dominant hand, because one of the things that I've learned doing this work, because we both come from the same background with this work, is that when you do it with the non-dominant hand, it acts as a deeper part, usually a more childlike part, a younger part that may have carried this weight for a long, long time. And giving that part of you voice is so powerful and so freeing. So if you want to use the non-dominant hand as well, just to make it even more fun, in
Yeah.
quotes, fun, To
Yeah,
write it out, and as you're saying, to write it out, don't look at it, don't read it back in, don't consume it, because you're basically, it's like throwing up. You want to get it out and not put it back in. Very clear.
exactly.
You keep
And
writing until it.
I love
Also,
what
just
I love what you're saying there, Barry, with the non-dominant hand. And again, you can
mhm,
go back and forth because sometimes you slow down so far with that non-dominant hand. Like sometimes it's got to come out in a flurry, so you can switch
yes,
back and forth. Sorry, I
true. That's
so
okay. We're getting it. Make sure everybody hears this. So we're getting the whole thing to them, which is great. But the other part is that what happens is tends to happen is when you're doing this, it doesn't. It may not stop. Like, I mean, it may stop. Like you're saying you can switch back and forward. What happens though? At some point, the energy shifts. You don't
yeah,
write it forever. You don't write for hours. You don't just. And you don't do it for like 2 minutes. You just do it until it stops. Ideally, so give yourself some time. But when it does, you find the energy shifts, and when it shifts, that's when you can start to think about: is it really? Are we done with this now? It may just be a pause, and in which case, yes, switch hands or go deeper and come back in again. But the thing is, when it changes, when it's time to say, okay, now I'm ready to complete. And when you complete this, when you do want to like crumple it up, burn it, put it in the fireplace. I'm a big fan of burning because that really it's done, it's gone. You won't see it again because it's now ash. It dissipates. It's like the best way of doing it. The piece that I want to underscore as well, though, is when it does change, you might discover something beautiful happens, which is that when you start, what happens when you it's like when you fully flush out all the crap that's in the container, suddenly it gets clear. You can see more clearly again, and then you might discover some things come through that are very powerful, very positive. If that happens, put that on a separate piece of paper you can save. So you'll know there's a delineation mark for that. So I want to make sure you get that there's ways to go with this.
yeah. Absolutely. And give yourself a break. I mean, don't rush the process. Don't rush to, as Barry said, rush the ending of the writing. Let it flow till there's nothing left, till you
Yes.
feel like you're just repeating and repeating, and just let it all out. And it's not linear. You might need to write that letter again, another one, and again, get rid of it. And I agree with you, Barry. Burning is now you've got my mind thinking, what's slipping in my drains? No, do not be writing on plastic. So,
No.
no,
Indeed.
so yeah, just burn it. Put it in a fireplace. Create a little metal bowl. Put it in the metal bowl. Put a match in it. Whatever it is. Stay safe, of course.
Yes, of
But
course.
there will be plenty of time where you will reflect and go, this is when my instincts were screaming at me. This is when I let my fantasy of what I wanted overtake reality. Now, the other
Yeah.
thing is, as we always say, and especially I want to bring this up now because when we're talking about another person, often when we meet another person and we have all this sort of excitement of like, oh my God, they're the perfect one. They complete me, whatever it is. They are often a messenger from the universe. That's all they are. It's not about the other person. It's the universe saying, hey, see these qualities that you see in this person? They exist within you too. They're just untapped. How about taking this opportunity to, like, I will use myself as an example. I used to feel I had very low self esteem. I didn't have any level of entitlement. And I would find myself attracted to these charismatic people because I thought they had something I didn't have. They had
Mhm.
confidence. They had, all of these things that I didn't see in myself. So I would be attracted to them. And often, unfortunately, they were narcissistic types, or, even worse, sometimes psychopaths. But instead of constantly getting attracted to them, I went, okay, what is the quality I see in them that I want as a part of my life? Develop
Mhm.
that within me. Stop looking for it in the other person. And as that developed in me, as my confidence went up, as my level of entitlement went up, I stopped finding these people so attractive. I could spot the narcissist. I could see beyond the flattery and the charm and everything. And I'd be like, oh, okay. That's what I was really looking for, not the
Right.
other person. So I think that's a huge one. Again, write down what you feel is lacking in you, and learn and know that there's nothing that's lacking in any of us. We're all
Right.
born with the same resources. We all have that same innate capacity to be anything we want in the world. So if we're looking for somebody else to complete us and look for qualities in another person, develop them within yourself,
Right.
and then
In
you'll
fact,
be
one
less vulnerable to other people.
Right. One of the things I want to, as a PS, because I mentioned earlier about the shifting energy from that venting and venting into something more beautiful. We talked before about forgiveness in a couple of episodes, so definitely go back and listen to those if you haven't listened to them already. One of the precursors for me working with forgiveness, because forgiveness is not mental process, not an act. It's not just a mental, like, I'm doing this, mechanical. It has more value than that. And for me, one of the keys is when the energy shifts from the distress, from the upset, from the wounding, and all that, all the vitriol being kicked out, the energy shifts into something more compassionate. Is the word I want to use. The thing is, what we discover, again, like you said, we have all the resources. We're always born the same thing. We are able to do this. Is when we start to discover compassion for ourselves, is when we can start doing the forgiveness, because compassion is a form of loving that has a capacity to absorb, to heal, and to absolve us from anything we're carrying around as wounding inside. And when we have compassion for ourselves, when we start to say things about forgiveness for ourselves, it tends to have weight. It tends to have impact. It tends to work more powerfully when we have compassion, because we didn't, to that point, actually have any compassion for ourselves. We were so busy in the moment, in the action, and in the judgment, that we were totally stuck in this limbo state away from our feelings. And so when we have the ability to be compassionate, then we start moving forward into a much more wholehearted place, and we can actually have the place of wholeness again.
Yeah. I would like to add one more thing to this, which might be a little there for some people, but I think by now you know that I'm out there, so nothing's going to surprise me.
Of course, yeah, no problem.
But one thing I was taught and has really helped me is, if I ever feel robbed of something, if somebody has taken something from me against my will, which can be in many different ways. It can be through abuse, it can be through sexual abuse, physical abuse, it can be through being, manipulated and lied, and your choice was taken away from you. You weren't aware of the facts. It could be money was stolen. It could be a range of things. What somebody once taught me, a spiritual teacher taught me many, many years ago, because I do happen to believe in reincarnation, is that an old debt was settled. That maybe in a previous life, I had taken something from them. And, I don't consider this a spiritual bypass, but it brings me peace. If I've lost something, it just does. I just think, rather than sit in the victimhood of thinking, oh my God, I was violated and somebody took something from me, I just say to myself, an old karmic debt was paid. I can let it go. I don't know what happened in previous lifetimes. Some of us are fortunate enough to remember, but I think there's a lot that we don't remember. And I simply know, when I can walk away and go, I've paid a karmic debt, then I can let go and I can move on. And to me, living in the past, living in regret, living in pain, living in shame, living in anger or resentment is robbing me of my present day experience. And that's all I have is the present day. So if that tip helps me, I hope it helps somebody else out there too.
So on that note,
yes,
because my mind goes this way,
yes,
if you look at it as a point of view that maybe there was a karmic debt that was paid to a previous life, this is the first time it's happened. It means you're owed a karmic debt next time.
Yeah.
just paying it forward, so to speak.
I tend to not go paying forward. I tend to think,
I have to go there because I was seeing both sides, so
well, you're just gathering up your what you're due in the future.
I'm investing in my future lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I like to be in the present, not in the past.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
But anyway, thank you, everyone. This is another great show. Thank you, Barry, as always.
Very rich conversation. It was really good.
Okay, great. See everybody
we'll see
next week. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.